Morning, it's December 3rd, and this is To My Liberal Friends. I want to shift topics today to one that was viewed by voters as one of the top issues in the recent campaign. I'm talking about immigration, and particularly at the southern border. Under the Biden administration, over 10 million people crossed the border illegally. The majority of them claimed some form of asylum and released into the country with a court date to appear for a hearing. Estimates are that over 2 million were referred to as getaways, and they're in the country hiding from government officials and have no court date. Allow me to give you a quote on immigration. Very critical. Quote, credibility in immigration policy can be summed up in one sentence. Those who should get in, get in. Those who should be kept out are kept out. And those who should not be here will be required to leave, end quote. Now, who do you think said that? Now, many would attribute that statement to either Donald Trump or someone close to him, but they would be wrong. That statement came from a civil rights icon, Barbara Jordan. Jordan, the first black congresswoman from the South and a star of the Watergate hearings, was named by President Clinton to head an immigration commission some 30 years ago. It is precisely because her recommendations were ignored that we're where we are today. The lack of credibility that Jordan bemoaned is how you get a man like Trump winning on this issue. Decades of unwillingness to enforce immigration laws were driven by the desire for some cheap, controllable labor and of others of a new client class that would shift political power to the Democratic Party. The culmination of that process under Biden became entwined with the identity of the party and its ideological activists who sincerely believe that national borders are an expression of racism, that turning away foreigners who want to move here illegally is immoral. The belief is unlimited, lawless immigration has become a litmus test issue for the activist left, like hostility to the existence of law enforcement itself. That leaves the Trump administration with a couple of options, and they've made it plain they intend to deport as many as possible, starting with those that have criminal records and those that have committed crimes after arriving in the United States. To deport this many people will require a huge increase in detention capacity, something the Biden administration has significantly reduced. The second option is both less expensive and easier. To accomplish this option will require assistance from the Mexican government. Trump previously used his option, which is formally known as the Migrant Protection Protocols, but is mostly known as Remain in Mexico policy. Trump was able to get Mexico's cooperation in 2018 by threatening tariffs on Mexican exports to the United States. I would assume this would be a tool he would use once again. It would be effective because the United States is Mexico's largest trading partner. Biden canceled that program as soon as he assumed office. Now, despite the fact that Mexico's new president is more of a conventional leftist than her predecessor, she's likely to be cooperative with the new Trump administration's demands to restore and remain in Mexico, given that U.S.-Mexico trade agreement is up for review in 2026. Access to the U.S. market is far more important to Mexico than any rhetorical solidarity with foreigners using its territory as a means of transporting into the U.S. This policy will be applied to other countries where migrants are required to ask for asylum in one of the countries they're passing through before they reach the U.S. border. Those coming up from Latin America would pass through multiple countries, including Panama and Costa Rica, as well as Mexico, where they could apply for asylum. They don't apply in these nations because their goal is to get to the United States because there they know there are certain benefits available to them. And according to a recent CBS poll, 57% of people say they support Trump to begin a program to deport illegal immigrants in this country. In fact, when asked the question, they wanted all illegal immigrants deported. Then we have the news that Trump had a conversation with Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum, where they discussed the proposed tariffs of 25% on Mexican goods, the flow of fentanyl from Mexico to the U.S., and the flow of migrants through Mexico as they cross the southern border of the United States. According to Trump, President Sheinbaum has agreed to step up efforts to prevent migrants from using Mexico as a transit to the U.S. border. She says she's not interested in closing her borders, and I'm not sure how she would effectively do this, but if they close their southern border, and I mean close it, not the weak efforts they did in the past, it would stem the tide to a great deal. And ultimately, in the end, I think President Sheinbaum is going to have to take some of these actions. Later was Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who made the trip to Mar-a-Lago to meet with Trump. He too was concerned about the tariffs being suggested by the incoming president. He pledged to make greater efforts to close the northern border. That gets ignored by the press in this country, but those numbers have been increasing as many fly into Canada on a visa, then cross over to the United States with no intention of leaving. And I've seen this myself personally living in Washington, D.C. If you want to see unchecked immigrants coming into the country, go out and watch the international arrival destination at Dulles Airport. People arrive coming through customs with 5 and 6 massive suitcase taped together. Does that look like somebody traveling on a visa that's going home? No, it doesn't. And in summary, I want to say that the United States has always been a nation that welcomes immigrants. But there has to be a legal system, and it has to be enforced. Simply opening up the borders and saying, come on in, what the Biden administration tacitly said, cannot work, and it should not work. The American people have spoken on this policy, and I can confidently say that Trump has a mandate on this issue. And so I go back to what Barbara Jordan said. Credibility in immigration policy can be summed up in one sentence. Those who should get in, get in. Those who should not be kept out. And those who should not be here will be required to leave. This has been To My Liberal Friends. Thanks for listening. I appreciate it. If you're on YouTube, hit the subscribe button.